Good afternoon. How are you today? Well, as far as I can tell, I'm still not COVID myself, and so I'm Holly's agent. Holly is resting right now. Her voice is better. She has somewhat more strength, but she's plainly not out of the woods yet. She's had 3 infusions at Johns Hopkins, and we may have a 2-day interruption before she has 2 more. And we're working all that out, the calendar. The temperature is in the 40s. It seems colder today, and it could be everything else. Maybe it's a very subjective feeling on my part. The wind is up a little bit. That makes a difference. So I've layered a little bit more. So that's my Thomas Jefferson weather report. I think it was the beginning of December. There was a question about a filing in Michael Cohen's case in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York to see if he could change the conditions of his supervision. And in the papers that were submitted to the court, Cohen passed on to his attorney research he had done, that is Cohen had done, and the lawyer then included those citations in his brief. The lawyer was replaced by another lawyer who went to the court and said 3 of the cases in the material submitted to the court didn't exist. So, because Cohen is considered to be a fabulist, when they found out that it was he who found the cases, then they got all concerned that it was some sort of fraud. Now, you may remember me discussing this back when it happened, and I said that I had seen in the past, particularly when I was an assistant U.S. attorney, an overburdened lawyer would read head notes describing a case, and without reading it, just cite it. Sometimes that worked, and sometimes it didn't. And at first, I thought they were just clumsy, but then I decided they were overworked. Now, AI, so-called artificial intelligence, has generative devices. And it's been found that among the generative devices are to ask it to find out information on a particular problem at law. Now, I know from continuing legal education seminars and my own readings that some young associates have gone to AI and asked it to do research. And they've found, not immediately, because they were kind of overworked, they found that the contributions they got from these generative artificial intelligence sources came up with cases that didn't exactly exist. How about that? So the explanation that Cohen had was that he went to one of these AI websites, Google Bard, I think it's called, and he generated this research. Now, along the line, it should have been caught for the same reason that, I observed these young defense lawyers trying to get their cases done using various tools, some of which were not reliable. And it turned out that these guys were submitting these cases to the court. They didn't exist, and the firms researched it, and they found out that they were cutting corners using these artificial intelligence websites. Now, that may be a little bit down in the detail for a normal conversation, except for the fact that we can expect Cohen to testify at upcoming trials. And they're going to probably try to make something of this. Now, somewhere along the line between Cohen and his then lawyer, somebody should have read the cases. Now, it turns out there were 3 cases that were suspect. I don't know how many other cases were involved in the submission to the court. And it is very possible that there were 30, 40, 50, who knows. Or 3, or just a statutory reference with a lot of factual description. So we don't know that, or I don't. Now, what Cohen did was he apparently discussed all of this with the court, and it was sealed, and he agreed to have it unsealed. So that's pretty interesting stuff. Now, Steve Gillers, who is a noted ethicist at NYU, and he and I, when we were both much younger, we tried a case together. It was a very difficult case, and but he was a very smart lawyer, and it's the one case my mom came to watch as well, and she was very excited when the judge ruled for me. And then after a break, she upheld an objection by Stephen against me, and she didn't like the judge very much after that. And the marshal, who was a Native American and thought highly of me, he got my mom all excited about what we were doing. Well, Steve Gillers has looked at this matter, and he's basically said, this is sure a problem, but artificial intelligence is going to do a lot of good. Now, artificial intelligence is not going to do what some fear. It's not going to create robots or anything. It's pretty sophisticated in its algorithms in terms of drafting and so forth. And I wish I kept it coding after I was a young guy, because it sounds like there's such powerful tools these days. But you can't moonlight on this stuff. You have to do it. And my former lab partner and almost lifelong friend, he's into the middle of this coding, and he's done it a good part of his life. So it's a very difficult thing. So what's the upshot of it? The upshot is Trump and company will make a lot of it to say that, see, that's Cohen making things up again, when in fact, that's not at all what's going on here. So that's that. Now, there's a big environmental story. Well, I should say there has been for decades now. But a current slice of it is addressed to those of you who eat chicken. That should get a few people, right? The question about chicken, since we're now eating so much of it, is its connection with water. Now, why is it connected with water? Well, let me give you this premise. If the use and eating of chicken continues, demanding the use of water, we will have neither sometime in the future. And that's because we're creating more chicken and more cheese. These two things are in very high demand, and it requires groundwater, and the groundwater is being used up indiscriminately and not recharging. And when it doesn't recharge and you don't have the water, you're going to have less chicken and you're going to have less water. So, for example, in Arkansas, they used to farm cotton, and now they farm soybeans, and they do that to feed the chickens. Do you know how many chickens there are in Arkansas? A billion chickens. That's the demand on chickens. Now, Idaho, as an Irishman, I've always been proud of Idaho's spuds, and it's the test of any good Irishman genetically, whether or not you're in the diaspora or you live in downtown Dublin, I think. Do you like potatoes? Well, they're not growing potatoes in Idaho so much now. They're growing alfalfa. And why? Because that they feed to their cattle, their cows. Do you know how many cows there are in Idaho? 700,000 cattle. Now, that and cheese, that's quite an amount. The cheese, think of pizza, think of cheese. Think of chicken. Think of everything is sold with chicken. If you go to a restaurant, they'll ask you, do you want protein with your salad? No, that's why I get a salad. I don't want meat protein. And the protein is usually chicken. It can be other things. So, what are we to do? Well, for health and for supply, we really should be eating less chicken and cheese. Isn't that amazing? Something so simple, but that's our problem. And the aquifers, the collection of water in the earth, underground, traveling, that you get from your well, or they're joined together for a community, or they're used at farms. Well, our aquifers supply 90% of the water. Now, here's another thing that's a little annoying to me, and that is that we are draining our aquifers, compromising our water supply, and exporting the chicken and the cheese. So, what is our warranty? When does our chance to survive this practice run out? Well, nobody knows, of course, because another thing that happens, if you go community, they have no idea what the inventory is of aquifers and watersheds and things like that. So, that's not a happy story, but it is advice to others to consider that there are better diets in terms of health and length of life. And the more people that we grow, and the more they eat, and the more they choose chicken and cheese, the less likely we are to have enough to go around. Again, the tragedy of the commons. Now, we can't have a walk and talk without talking about Trump a little bit. Trump says that the Biden administration is attacking Christianity. Now, in terms of Christians, Trump went to Fordham. He said, nobody I know ever saw him there. And we were there at the same time, by the way. Or I should say, I was there at the same time. He was supposed to be there. And they put him off in a military school or something. Who knows what they did with him. I don't think he ever felt responsible to learn a thing. And he's always been so self-aggrandizing. He has his own definition of what he should do. Okay, so that's his Christian life. And we've seen everything he does. And so we can't judge by his actions. He's Christian. He's sort of more like a mongrel. And who's he criticizing? Biden, who is a Roman Catholic and who does practice. Whether you agree with him or not, and I don't always, and I don't like the invocations of religion at public functions, including In God We Trust. But you cannot call Biden an enemy of Christians. Now, if you disagree with Christians, that is, imposing their views on you, I don't think that that's destructive. That's allowed. In fact, that's why we have separation of church and state, exactly for those differences that are so important to people in religion or ethically. So there's that. Let's visit the primary candidates against Trump. Christie's pretty interesting in this sense. He's more like the commentator in the field than a candidate for the office of president. That may not be an accident. He, for example, is talking about Nikki, and Nikki talking about slavery. And he says, how's that possible? How can you do that? Now, we've already talked about this, but it dawned on me that maybe what he's really running for is to be host of a high-paying show on one of the networks, because it doesn't appear this approach is getting much headway among the MAGA morons that support Trump. Oh yes, I'm sorry I said it, but luckily I'm not running for office. And nobody can get on my case when I say these people are a danger to America, and they are. So that's what I got today, and hopefully Holly will be better, and I won't get COVID. And presently, as best I can tell by the tests, I don't have COVID, and Holly and I are practicing, if it's possible, distancing. And we have because of the kids that we have extra space in our home that can facilitate that. And we both actually wear masks around the house. So it's she's a tiger, and I'm counting on her pulling through, and I'm going to help in every way I can. So if I don't talk to you, and I expect I will, if I don't talk to you until the new year, have a great weekend, and I look forward to talking to you again. So I say ta-ta from my cathedral of trees, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye-bye.